Good afternoon. Welcome back to the B&H Virtual Event Space. You're tuned into another episode of the Passionate Photographer Critiques, hosted by Lassie. A huge thank you to them. And for that, I would like to welcome the passionate photographer, Steve Simon. Steve, how's it going?
It's going well. Thank you very much, Derek. It's great to see you. You're feeling much better from your
I'm back.
flu that you had, which is never fun. I know
It
that.
was, I took down an entire household for 2 weeks, which was
Oh,
not fun at all. But we're
yeah.
back, we're healthy, and
It looks like there's a spring in your step. Your eyes are,
I'm
glistening,
glowing.
glowing. Yeah, glistening.
Yes.
I don't know
It
if that's
surely
good.
isn't the weather, that's for sure.
I know spring has sprung, but it doesn't completely feel like it. But it's looking out my window, it looks pretty nice. Listen, I'm glad we're back. I'm glad you're back. I went solo last week and wasn't as much fun, of course. And we've got a lot of great images to get to, so I think we'll just get to them right away.
Yeah, let's dive in.
One of the things that I often do at the beginning is I talk a little bit about sort of a tip or something, and I thought maybe I'd put you on the spot. I know you're always shooting. Is there something quick that you want to pass on to people when it comes to the photography that you do that has really been kind of beneficial to you as you go out and you start shooting?
Yeah, definitely. Photograph with intent. Really think about why you're taking an image. What is your purpose? What are you trying to take images of? And I feel like that helps you so much more rather than just to go out aimlessly. It helps kind of hone you in.
I love that, as we've often talked about, the idea of serendipity as your guide can be great when you have that blank state slate, but having some kind of a plan or an idea allows you to focus your attention. And as I've repeated many times, when you know what you're looking for, it's a little easier to find. So let's get down to the first few images. And I think one of the commonalities you'll see in terms of these images is this sort of feeling of, I don't know, just kind of calm and serendipity, and just, there's a real kind of quietness and beauty to all these images, even though they're varied in terms of kind of the subject matter. But I think what they all have in common is this communication of, something sort of calm and beautiful. And I thought we'd start out with this first black and white image. I have a feeling you're going to really like this one. I know I do. It's a little bit different in the sense that we're seeing kind of the backs of these two creatures, if you will. But there's just a beautiful kind of connection between the animal and beast, Beauty and the Beast, if you will, as well. I look at an animal like this, and I don't know if I'd feel that comfortable looking at the horns of this thing and looking at the size and weight of this thing. I mean, there's no question that if you get on its bad side, it would not necessarily end well. I don't know if I think you have to, obviously there's a relationship that is happening between the animal keeper and the animal. But it's just a beautiful and authentic moment, it looks to me. And you don't want to disturb. It's just kind of oh, look at this. And I think compositionally it works beautifully. Even though, there's a lot of hay and woods and slats in the background, you still definitely see what's happening in terms of, the woman or the girl lying in the bosom of this creature, if you will. And I just thought it was a really nicely done. It works really well in black and white too.
Yeah, I agree. Echo everything you said. It's nicely composed, nicely framed. Might maybe want to see a little wider shot just to allow for a little breathing room. Only because sometimes when you butt up against the edges, it's nicely tucked in there. But sometimes I like the option to see a little more. But that said, it doesn't take away anything from this image. It is nicely fit in. It's nice and snug, which I think fits in with the entire theme of this. Like, she looks so comfy laying there. I love the dynamic range in this.
Mm.
It's detailed and there's enough contrast without it moving into that that look of that HDRE look where there's too much shadow pulled back and too much highlight pulled back, where you kind of have everything where it's an even plane, and because you want contrast, you want light and dark. And I think this is that beautiful balance of dynamic range without going too far. It's nice. It just has a nice, really, really clean look to it.
Yeah, and I think those of us that I know there are a lot of film fans out there in B&H event land, as well as darkroom veterans. And when it comes to the post-processing of this particular image, the sort of light areas that create this magnetic quality of your eye going in here where really you want to go was very well done in terms
Yeah.
of the light-dark ratio. And, there's a little bit of tension here. I just realized, I mean, I had realized this earlier. There's another horn on the right here. And if you look at that, to me, that adds tension because what if this guy gets jealous, of what's going on here? That again is going to be a bit of a problem. But it's a beautifully done image and it's really nice. So let's move over to this image, and you have the sort of swirl of the line, the beautiful color, the moment, and you've got the outline of the person, going out from whatever this place is. And it's just, again, I just love the kind of swirl and color or monochromatic color, if you will, because there really isn't a lot of color here. I love what's going on with kind of the head of the human sort of going into this kind of interesting energy and the swirl. And, it's dark, but there's enough detail in the lines and the geometry that allow you to see that. And it's got a similar kind of quiet feel to it. And I think it works aesthetically and content wise, even though we don't really know exactly kind of what this place is, it's got a similar kind of feel to what's going on.
Yeah, again, I'm not going to beat a dead horse. You
Mm.
nailed everything here. One thing I will add is I like that it's like a flatness to the blacks. And in certain images, when you have the whole left side of the histogram a little flattened out, I think it adds such a cool look. And it looks to me, I mean, on my screen from what I see, it looks like it's not like deep, deep, deep pitch black. It's pulled back a little bit. There's a little bit of restraint that flattens out that black a little bit. And it's almost like a really, really, really dark gray, which I think plays so beautifully. And when you crush the shadows, whether intentionally or unintentionally, and it takes out a certain level of detail and distraction in the shadows, it just flattens it out. It looks so nice. And I think this has that look that plays in with everything else. You see it across the gradation of that orangish, reddish color in the top. It just allows for a very smooth gradient and shift that is super beautiful.
Yeah, and when we start to discuss the enhancement and the unlimited literally possibilities of how you enhance in terms of the subtlety and the degree, I think that's a good sign because the image itself is solid and what's being communicated, and then you have the ability to kind of change the communication to a certain degree, oftentimes in a very subtle way, just through your enhancement. So I think it's often a good discussion to talk about just how much you can do when it comes to enhancement, the more you understand and know your post-processing
Yeah.
software. And the caveat and the asterisk, of course, is that everyone's looking at this image on their own screen. And, I have the benefit of the doubt of having the original file, although certainly it's not a huge file in my Lightroom catalog. So I probably see it the best of everybody on my monitor. And now we're moving on to another image, in a similar way. You've got, this image is probably more about, and let me just call up the right ones together. This image again is more about the um, ambiance of the setting and the environment than it is of the actual content and the people involved here. But when you look at this one, again, it's black and white, so we don't have the color to deal with, but we have the different textures, and I think it's really well done. It also creates a kind of a nice mood. And you could probably see the individual a little bit clearer than you could in the previous image. But it's got a similar geometry, similar feel, even though it's black and white. In terms of what the image is communicating, it's communicating a human environment with a human in it, but it really isn't about the human so much. It's about how the image makes you feel, and I think it's very effective.
Yeah, definitely. When this was a thumbnail, when you had the entire group selected, I thought that was a doorway.
Mm.
And and you couldn't really see the guy standing behind there. And then when we look at it full size, it was almost like it threw me for a loop. And I'm like, wait, hold on. At first, like I'm like my brain was tripping. Now I had to reprocess everything. And it's the details and the nuances for me. It's the fact that the window isn't clean and there's those smudges across it, that adds such a level of interest for me personally. And, going back to what you were talking about on the last photo, Steve, I think that's what's important about hearing different perspectives is you never know who's looking at your images and how they're affected by them. And that could be such an empowering thing to hear a different perspective and say, wow, I might have something to my work. It's not just about what can make my work better. It's what if there's stuff that I'm doing in my work subconsciously that I'm not even aware of that people are seeing and it's a quality of my work or it's a certain aspect of the character of my work or of my style that I'm incorporating, I'm not even cognizant of it, and people see it, and it's something that is drawing people to my work. So, in comparing it to the last photo, there's a little bit of ambiguity to it. Where
Mm.
are they? What's going on? And we
Mm.
talk all the time, or at least I do, ad nauseum about intrigue and having that good mysterious quality to images that make you want to know more. And I think both of these images in their own way add that sense of, it piques my curiosity.
Yeah, we're both very passionate about sort of real life, real moments, street photography. And if you want to add this kind of intrigue and mystery to your images, I think it's no surprise in given the number of great images that we've seen pass through the Lightroom catalog in the passionate critique, is that some of the common elements are going out, with some intent. So your intent might be to shoot at a very dramatic time of the day, the golden hour, when you've got this very high contrast between light and shadow, and you have a lot of scenes that, if you focus for the highlights, you're going to get this dark surroundings that's going to sort of create these kinds of images and give you that kind of mystery. And going out with intent of that can be very powerful. And then the other thing that you brought up is the power of a critique is to recognize things that maybe you hadn't seen in your own work that you kind of, oh, okay, well, Derek said that. And you know what? I agree. I never really noticed that before. And it's just a little bit of affirmation and just lets you sort of go out there and, continue to do what you're doing. And especially when you're doing things that are satisfying you and then ultimately, pleasing others when they get to see it. So these three images again have again that similar kind of beautiful, relaxed quality. You can see it's kind of nature. I suspect that it might be the same photographer. There's the same kind of processing that's happening in terms of the color palette. It looks like the same subject, although three very diverse images that may have been taken on that same outing. And sometimes you get lucky in finger quotes when, the light is there, when you have this kind of foggy kind of situation. That's just such a great addition to and a great surprise and a lucky thing when, as a photographer, you encounter this kind of scene. So, three very beautiful images. If you had to choose one of the three, that would be kind of a difficult thing to do. I think they're all very successful. But the question is there one that maybe to represent this particular shoot that works best for you? And there's not necessarily a right answer, just like in various contests that I know that you've judged and I've judged and entered and won and lost, mostly lost. You it's really a question of opinion and sort of baggage and aesthetic ideas that everyone has when it comes to pictures. We all can, contribute our 2 cents into it, but ultimately you make the decision. It's your choice. So if we want to talk specifically about this images, we can. Maybe more generally, Derek, do you have any uh, points that you wanted to add on?
The only point I'll add is I really love working all the different angles. And I think this is something that people don't do enough of, taking something and looking at it from different perspectives. And again, we talk about this all the time, Steve, how you pair images together. And a group of successful images can be even more successful when paired. And as we've seen, sometimes a group of moderately successful images can be really successful when paired in the right way. And I think that this just shows that when you look for different angles, when you change your perspective, it makes you a better photographer. Which one is the best one? Well, I guess it depends on the application or who's looking at it or what medium they're being presented. It's really tough to say because they're all three so different, but equally effective in their own way.
Yeah, no question. The idea of working it, because look, if you don't work it, maybe you just stop at this image and maybe that's enough. But having that difficult decision to make as to kind of which image is going to be the one. And then again, your images don't work necessarily always on their own. You're creating a body of work. And ultimately, as we've spoken, and especially when we have the ability to hold images up together and sort of talk about the power of seeing them together and what that does and how 1 + 1 could equal 9. And that's a whole new level of instinct and talent and sort of skill in determining kind of how you're going to put your images together. And then the other thing I'll just reinforce is that no matter who you are, whether you're Derek, Ansel Adams, Joseph Kudelka, pick a hero. Um, those people need help when it comes to making that final decision because of the thing we just talked about. And that is, we don't always see what others do in our images, but when someone points something out as to kind of how they're interpreting what you captured, you can often understand and realize that, yeah, maybe I am doing this. I didn't quite realize that at the time, but that's kind of what I'm doing. So we'll end this series with this image, which is kind of a panoramic landscape, if you will. And again, I think images that kind of give you a sense of what it feels like to be there, something that makes you feel. Maybe you smell the morning dew. I think that can be very powerful. And oftentimes, as a photographer, when you walk out with your camera, you're trying to capture something that you deem to be worthy, something beautiful, something you want to share with the rest of the world or the rest of your circle. And I think this image does that. I think, again, the enhancement could be, deepened and darkened and made stronger. I know you're dealing with a certain kind of constraint when you're doing panoramas. The only thing I would say is that sometimes, again, when you cut off the trees here, maybe having a little bit of extra at the top and bottom might help to reinforce this feeling of just relaxed. And by cutting off a little bit, not a deal breaker by any means with this picture, you're creating a little bit of tension by, kind of doing some landscape work and cutting off the branches off the top and bottom. But you have to crop somewhere.
Yeah, it's funny you talked about, the dew and the other aspects that you might feel from this image. I heard this image when I first looked at it up on the screen, and that's powerful when you feel something, when you hear something, when it takes you someplace. That's the power of a really well taken image. I love, love, love the panoramic ratio here. I think it works so well. This is one of those images that needs to be printed large to appreciate it. Yeah, we can nitpick and talk about the one tree just right of center that's going out of frame and the little piece that is jumping into the frame in the top left corner. Um, that's, I guess, flavor your coffee to taste. Some people aren't going to be bothered by that. For me, I'm a little more distracted by the piece of branch hanging in on the left than I am the one leaving the frame center right. But overall, it's a beautiful image,
Mm.
and I think it really nails the feeling. It just says everything, every adjective for serenity that you can think of here. It packs it in.
Yeah,
Nice
and
restraint on the processing too.
you brought up the idea of printed really big, and I, like you, whenever I have the opportunity, love to take in an actual, gallery show, museum show, to see printed work of photographs, because the communication is that much different, arguably so much powerful to encounter an image printed beautifully at the right size for that particular image. And what it communicates is oftentimes something very similar to what we're talking about here in looking at the image on the screen, probably a lot smaller, maybe even than I on my big screen here. But the power of actually doing something with your images, the good ones, the great ones, and printing them and having them in a printed form is probably will exaggerate the power of that image, to an exponential degree compared to kind of what you're seeing. But it still needs to work, at its base level on the screen when editing.
Yeah.
Okay, so these next four images are of animals and creatures. Differ a little bit from the image we saw of that giant. What kind of an animal is that, Derek? You're an animal kingdom guy. Um,
With
Big
the
cow, big steer.
but
Yeah, Outback Steakhouse. I don't know what it is, but it was amazing. So these are actually, three subjects that I think many of the viewers and the photographers that we encounter love to pursue, and that is, bird photography, wildlife, and then just our own domestic pets. And so in looking at, let's maybe start with the cat images. Um, I think, look, people don't tire of looking at images of cats. There's no question. If you go to YouTube, some of the most popular videos of all times, for whatever reason, are cats. I'm more of a dog person, but whatever. And you have to admit that in this particular image, it's just a beautiful capture. I hate to use that term necessarily, but the lights on this animal is just beautiful. It's centered. The look and the gaze and the eyes are pretty amazing. When you look at it, you can tell that when you zoom in, that the eyes were the main focus here, and that the aperture was one wide open. I have the benefit of seeing that it was a f2.8. And because of that, and because of the fact that it's 100 millimeters, it means that, the nose is going to be out of focus, but that's not a problem. It's actually a benefit, I would say, in this picture. And the eyes are kind of where you're magnetically just riveted to. Simple, great light, and it just works for what it is.
yeah, I agree. Nicely framed. Um,
Mm.
Photos like this can get a little tricky with composition, and I love the decision to center the face there. I love, as much as I love the rule of thirds and think it works so great, the skill and ability to see and know when to center an image, I think is so understated in photography, and everybody automatically goes. I think so many people would frame this with, the cat's head right on that third line on the left. And I love it centered. It just draws you right into the center of the image. And again, I think centering an image when it's the right decision can be one of the hardest things, but when you nail it, I think it's such a sign of a good eye.
And, we've talked about the idea of, having breathing room and having the ability to kind of recompose and definitely move the cat, into a different position. I won't even try and do it. It'll still work. But it just works. And
Yeah.
that's the bottom line. That's when the guides sort of get tossed aside. Does the image work the way it does? And I think part of the centering and the room on the top and the bottom, and the sides, makes this image work, in that, you have that breathing room all around and you just go and you just deep dive into the eyes of this creature, and it works really well. Yeah, wildlife photography, of course. These cats are not as domesticated, I'm guessing, as the previous cat, which means that, the photographer doesn't have the same compositional choices or proximity, to be able to take this image. What's interesting, if I look to the metadata, it may be a little surprising, is that it says here 78 millimeters. And, as far as I'm concerned, that's not long enough for me, to be this close to these animals. But I think what is happening here in terms of the moments and the idea that, whether or not it's true, I kind of look like it kind of looks to me that these two cats are kind of snuggling up. And to me, this kind of moment between these two, amazing animals, makes this image, strong, and helps to kind of alleviate any, criticisms and shortcomings, in terms of, you've got this whatever that plant is, that, it goes a little bit too high, unfortunately. You'd like it to be down lower. It's a little bit distracting as it leads to the eye, but, again, I don't think it's a deal breaker. I'm looking at this wildlife image more as the way I would a street photo, in that, you can't always be able to sort of move things within the composition around. And then, of course, the light is maybe not, as beautiful as we saw in the previous image. But I think too that you can enhance this image, in a much stronger, more powerful way. And I think it's worth doing. But otherwise, I think, it's working. So I'll let you, add to that, Derek.
Yeah, I mean, as we say all the time, we don't know all the circumstances surrounding how the image was taken. So it's very hard to say, well, it looks like it's down, like it's shot from slightly above the lions looking down. So I'm guessing they're in a Jeep or some kind of vehicle or bus or safari vehicle. So you may not want to get down on ground level or may not be even able to. Um, but I look at images like this, and this is a moment that a lot of people won't ever experience in their life. And for that alone, that's the power of just simply having an image. And I think it's a privilege to have your images critiqued and to take images that are worthy of being dissected and picked apart. But it's also a privilege to be able to experience stuff like this in real life and literally just have a image, no matter how good it is, no matter what camera it was taken on, or if it was taken on a phone, just to have an image to remind you of that moment whenever you look at it. And I think that's the simple beauty and power of photography for me, is that, an image like this, yeah, can you pick it apart? Can you make suggestions? Can you really dive in and give it a critique? You can. But I'm content to just say, it's a nice moment. And I bet the experience is something that is even more powerful than any camera can capture. And just having something to show for it. And you read my mind, because I was gonna I was gonna go into if I had to give a critique, I would love to see it in like a nice contrasty black and white. And because it looks like, to me, quality wise, it looks like the quality's a little degraded. Maybe it was pushing on the zoom, or it wasn't full resolution. um Black and white does help out with that a little bit and give it kind of like a filmic look. Little cheat code there that only works on certain pictures, but I kind of like, I think the fact that they were in the shadows and the good light was just missing them
Mm.
is further magnified in the color version. And in the black and white, it kind of takes that out. You can get a little more contrasty. I think the color was a little muddy in
Mm.
it.
Yeah, just because we don't have a lot of time, I thought we would just continue on just for a few more minutes because we're going to end the show in a relatively short time. These two bird images, I mean, again, when you start to make a collection of these bird images, it gets really kind of interesting and there's a momentum that you tend to have. These two are very similar. It looks like a similar kind of situation, maybe similar photographer, same photographer that took them. Definitely, I think the image on the left with the yellow perhaps reads just a little bit better. The angle here is just a little bit oblique here on the face of the bird, and also the light and the fact that this bird is literally a black and white bird makes it a little bit harder to see in the enhancement that we're looking at here. But I think, of course, what we're looking at in terms of the telephoto, the out of focus background, and there are a lot of people that love photographing birds, and the more you go out and shoot them, the stronger your collection goes, and then you know images that you liked at the beginning get tossed out because you've got more interesting stuff, and it's like everything, the more you shoot, the luckier you get. Um, so I just thought I would show these three images. Again, we're now talking more about street photography and the moments that you encounter and how you compose them and how you photograph them. And I think, all three of these images are very much kind of above average when it comes to the kind of street photography that you go out and you try and capture. First off, I mean, this is just crazy. It doesn't look so relaxing. I think I'd rather be with the steer than with this. But it's a beach and you just have to deal with the reality of what's going on. But this really does, make a statement far beyond kind of what's actually happening here and just, about the world. I don't know where this is exactly. I don't know if it's familiar to you. I always think Coney Island when I see the beach in New York, but I don't think this is Coney Island, although who knows?
Yeah,
Um,
I have no idea where this is, but there's so much just laying on the tracks itself.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
everything. This is such an awesome image.
it really is. And
Like it's perfect and perfect black and white processing too.
yeah,
It's very nice.
compositionally, it,
Yeah.
it really works. And it's funny, but it's also serious and it's also sad in some ways, but it's also great that people can relax despite the progress of the world around them. And speaking of, what the photographer was able to achieve here is not an easy thing, and that is the all the chess pieces kind of aligning up and working in a way that you kind of move around this image and you can enjoy it on a lot of different levels, and then ultimately go back and say, all right, I know what's going on here, but the moment and the dance, if you will, of all the individual construction workers. I mean, look at this guy is plieing. There's a lot of grace happening, in terms of these guys. And the color is working because, they're all kind of in official construction team uniforms. I think it's a really well done image.
Yeah, definitely. You know what I'm gonna say if you know me by now, the one thing I would do to it is I would have shot it a little wider and I would square up the frame based on for me in this situation for people wondering about squaring up images when you have structures like buildings and then structures that can be a little more imperfect or should not be measured upon. I would go based on the garage. I'd manually I'd see how the AI does, but usually in something like this, I would manually draw out my lines and I would draw my lines based on the garage in the back because that seems to be what the most square and true square frame is, or image part of the image is. So I would go based on that. But yeah, I mean, it's not a huge thing. I think the shot is super cool and just the framing, the way that There's no real intercepting of the guys. Everything just kind of plays so well to with one another. It almost looks like toy figures.
Yeah, it really does. I mean, they're little Lego minifigures,
Yeah,
or they're Gumby kind of bendable things, like this
yeah.
guy hanging on to the thing as they build the scaffolding. But I have a feeling that, often the things that we talk about, and that is you find a scene that's got visual potential, and then you just stand there and you wait and shoot and wait and shoot and spend a little time. And I'm not even talking about investing, you know, 20 minutes. We're talking about staying for, minutes as opposed to seconds, and waiting and shooting and hoping that you get this kind of synchronicity of
Mm,
all the people kind of, in a moment, working together so that the planets align and the sum is greater than the parts of these individual construction workers. So
yeah,
you've got an image here that is, much more than the reality of guys building a scaffolding.
yeah.
There's
And that's
something
the make
else.
or break part right there. Is if they're not stacked perfectly, that's everything in this
Mhm.
image. They have to be stacked right.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, it's well done. I think well done. And then lastly, we'll end on this little moment. Not sure what's happening there, but I think that, this little moment between the little girl and this guy are just sort of the icing in the cake. And then, the rest of the people, it's kind of interesting. We don't know exactly what's happening here. But again, you've got this little sort of connection that's happening, and that makes it really work. And, it works as an individual image and in the context of the photographer's body of work and the other things that they do. I'm sure it would gain even more momentum in collaboration with other images.
Yeah, and referring back to the last image and comparing it to this one, you see how the layering works, where when you have stuff overlap, it adds such a strength to it. Not to say that this image still isn't a strong image, but sometimes you get lucky and sometimes it's more a matter of waiting. This, I think it was less waiting because it looks like everyone was just standing around. But the difference in if the guy in the champion hoodie was not there and you had the full view of the woman off to the right, you have the moment going on in the center, you have the woman looking off camera left, you have the guy looking off camera right and up, and it makes it such a cool image. Again, these are the images where it's like, how much do I love it? Does it really matter that they're not, we get to be snobs sometimes and it's like we want everything perfect, but I think that's the beauty of street photography is sometimes you're at a 9 out of 10 and you want that 10 out of 10. Other than that, I would just say the little sliver on the right, obviously square it up, as I say all the time, that little sliver, especially because there is some color there. It's a little distracting to the eye whenever you have something creeping in on the edge of the frame. And yeah, I mean, ultimately a beautiful moment in the middle of the frame that kind of accounts for everything else.
Yeah, some great inspiring work that we've seen in this particular episode, and we've got a lot more stuff. I know people have been sending in. Keep sending them in. We're gonna get to them eventually. It's an ongoing series. You can't stop us from doing this, and we'll keep doing it. Wanted to thank Lassie, of course, for sponsoring it, and Photo Educate, my workshop website, photoeducate.com. I'm heading out to Tokyo on Friday, Derek, one of my favorite
Oh,
places to shoot.
nice.
So I'll be gone from there. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about it in the next episode. Um, and I hope that you guys will continue to send in this stuff. And yeah, that's all I have to say for now, other than I'm inspired. When I see all this work, I just really want to get out there and make my own great images.
I echo that sentiment completely. This makes me want to dive right onto my computer over here and start digging through my archives. And that's a great response to have from looking at people's images. So a huge thank you to, of course, Steve and Lassie, but also to all of our viewers out there. We can't do these critiques without you guys sending images in. So I know in the past we've been like, we'll only send 3 and only send this. send us images you want critiqued. We love having a plethora of images to go through it. And I think as long as, we're doing it, it makes us better photographers. And as long as you guys are tuning in and sending us your images, it's going to make you guys better photographers as well. So I'm going to leave it right there. I know we had to end a little short today, so I do apologize, but Steve isn't going anywhere. He's going to be back and critiquing more images. So huge thank you to everybody once again. And that's it. This edition of the Passionate Photographer Critiques is now in the books. Catch y'all next time.
See you later, guys.